Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. The Tool Lab crew just finished our battery-powered chainsaw head-to-head comparison. And this time we focused on 16 to 18-inch bar length saws. We did a bigger one and that'll come out in a couple weeks. Our last chainsaw head-to-head was in 2020. Look, back then, we were impressed with what battery-powered chainsaws could do at the time, right? But the tool world never sits still, and the technology has come a long way in 5 years to include additional chainsaws to look at. So to capture those advancements and include the new chainsaws, we developed a list of tests or a series of tests, evaluation criteria, all aimed at showcasing performance, power, and user experience. And for the users, we had some of our local friends, professional arborists, and seasoned pros in the timber and forestry products industry help us out. Their hands-on experience provides more of an authentic, rigorous perspective on exactly how a day-to-day user would approach these tools and evaluate them as well. Bar length was our primary selection factor for this test. So if you're asking, why did we choose 16 to 18-inch bars? Well, because they're the go-to size for most daily chainsaw tasks. This range kind of covers everybody. It's an ideal balance between versatility and performance. So we tested 10 saws in our lineup, and the voltages ranged from 18 volt to 80 volt. So to fairly evaluate, such a wide volt range, we normalize performance data by inches cut per watt hour. And that's a standard practice in our testing process that kind of helps ensure that we use accurate comparisons across different power platforms. So for our categories, our testing categories, we looked at weight, decibels, speed, runtime. We did a power test, which I would call it more of a torture test. We always try to include something like that. All of this data was used to calculate, from the torture test, we use it to calculate our watt hour efficiency, kind of providing insight into power management. Features, ergonomics, and price. Because cutting performance is our highest priority, 2 of the 3 performance categories were double weighted in our overall ranking. We felt that mattered more. I want to talk a little bit or quickly about our chainsaw testing materials because we really put a lot of thought and effort into this. One of the biggest challenges in testing a large group of chainsaws, it's maintaining consistency across test materials. Trees vary naturally in diameter, density, and straightness, and their bark often collects dirt, debris, and can dull the chains during use, right? So to ensure fair and reputable results, our team removed the bark and they milled oak test pieces into cants. And they used a Hud-Son H360 portable hydraulic sawmill. This thing is awesome. If you don't know what a cant was or is, it's a term used in the milling world to describe a log that has been cut and squared to like a dimensional size. The log's diameter determines the size of the cant. Our solid oak cants milled into the following sizes. We did an 18 by 16 by 8 footer, we did a 16 by 16 8 footer, and we did a 14 by 16 8 footer. And that allowed us to just be consistent, repeatable. It was great. So these perfectly uniform, dense blocks of oak provided consistent test material and pushed each saw to its absolute limit. I want to note that a sawmill like the Hud-Son H360 is probably the only tool on the planet that could make these size test cans for us. It's amazing. And if you're in the Northeast and you want to learn more about it, reach out to Halcyon Hill Wood Products for more information. And I can leave you a little link in the description. Okay, so as far as the chainsaw weight, the winner was the Husqvarna 542i, the XP. Weight's a major factor in chainsaws, both to pros and to DIYers, right? If a battery-powered saw is too heavy to handle comfortably, any advantage it offers over a lighter gas saw it quickly just disappears as you use this thing over time. So we weighed each saw twice to capture both the bare tool, but also capture the saw at its working weight. We weighed the bare power head basically with the bar and chain removed, no battery, empty chain oil reservoir, etc. And then basically we weighed it fully assembled. So we filled the oil tank, we inserted the battery, and we added the chain. And then we would record the final operational weight. The Husqvarna 542i, it's a pro saw all day long. It earned top spot. It's a lighter saw at 11.98, 12 pounds basically, fully assembled. It's impressively nimble and comfortable for extended use, which I think that matters for, comfort, but also just getting fatigued. And interestingly, it also showed one of the smallest weight increases between bare and assembled. It was like a 5-pound difference, which is a testament to its efficient design. In second place was the DeWalt. That was 13.16 pounds, followed by Kress at 13.18, making it both exceptionally lighter but tight finish. Husqvarna 350i, the Power Axe, designed more for a homeowner and farm use, placed fourth. That was 14 pounds, and steel was, I think, the heaviest at 17.34 pounds. All right, our next test that we did was we just wanted to check the decibel output on these saws, right? Chainsaws aren't normally known for being quiet, but battery-powered chainsaws, they generally produce less noise than a gas saw. We all pretty much agree on that. The winner of this category, it was actually a tie. It was between the DeWalt and the Ryobi at 88.7 decibels, followed by the Husqvarna 542i, the XP, at 88.9 decibels, and Milwaukee placed fourth at 89.1 decibels. The loudest saw was the Atlas. That was at, one of the loudest, that was at 98.2. Kress topped the scale at 101.7 decibels. I will note that 6 of the 10 saws tested, they fell below the OSHA threshold for 90 decibels for prolonged exposure during an 8-hour day. But even so, we strongly recommend you just wear the appropriate personal protective equipment. It's just a smart thing to do. We had Husqvarna. They partnered with us and they provided us some PPE for all the saw operators. And there was some really cool stuff that they showed this year. First of all, our mandatory training equipment and testing equipment was a chainsaw helmet, safety glasses, chainsaw rated gloves, and the Husqvarna technical chainsaw pants. And guys, I gotta tell you, these pants, they're not like chaps. They're unbelievable. They performed exceptionally well. You can move comfortably in them. Our operators really like them, and they're not like traditional chaps, which is great. Okay, so let's talk about the testing again. We moved on to a speed cutting test, and the winner of that was the Kress. Now, for speed cutting testing, we used treated telephone poles, utility poles. They're pine, treated pine. And we liked this as a selection for material because they're widely available, they're clean, and they're mostly uniform in size. So we matched the poles as close as we could, within 1/4 of an inch, I think. And then we'd flip them to maintain the consistent diameters throughout our test. The battery-powered chainsaws, they're often used by linemen and other utility professionals as well. So this setup provides a practical and relevant benchmark for some of those users, right? So the poles were held off the ground at waist height, just for fatigue purposes for us, by a mini skid steer machine. Now for this test, we performed 3 cuts, down, up, and down for time. And we did it 3 times, and then we would calculate the average time for a final score. The poles measured approximately 10 3/4 inch in diameter, and like I said, varied maybe between 1/4 of an inch, depending on the piece selected. The fastest saw in the test was Kress, averaging 15.12 seconds, a full 7 seconds faster than the second place steel at 22.21 seconds. Atlas, the Harbor Freight brand, earned third place. That was at 32.64 seconds, followed closely by Milwaukee with 33.48 seconds. Slowest saw in the mix was the Makita XGT, and that clocked in at 55.02 seconds. From there, we moved on to a crosscut runtime test. Winner of that was Milwaukee. Now, on this crosscut test, it's our second performance test that we did for each saw, and we were performing as many crosscuts as possible on a single battery charge. This is often called a cookie cutting test maybe, but since we were using those oak test beams and they're squared, we refer to it as kind of a wafer cutting, right? The maximum cutting depth on all the saws is roughly 2 inches shorter than the bar length. So And that's due to the felling spikes in front of the saw. So to account for this, we milled the beam 2 inches shorter than the beam's bar length. Why did we do that? We did that to ensure that whether the saw had a 16 or 18-inch bar, it was cutting about 90% of its maximum capacity. So to prevent thermal overload, our operators alternated 2 saws. So each saw would make 2 cuts, and then they would alternate and make 2 cuts. And they would just work on opposite sides of the beam. This rotation kept the saws from overheating and maintained kind of consistent operating temperatures, but also consistent testing conditions. Our winner in this test was the Milwaukee with 13 full cuts and a partial cut of 3 inches. Second place went to the Husqvarna the Pro saw, the 542i. That made 11 full depth cuts and a partial 5-inch cut. Atlas brought home the bronze again with a 10 full cuts, partial cut of 5 inches. Ryobi narrowly missed Atlas with an impressive 10 full cuts and a 3-inch partial depth cut. Our bottom 2 performance in this test category was Steel with 5 cuts plus 9 inches and Makita XGT with 3 cuts, 10 inches. Again, this was a very difficult test for these saws. We then moved on to our milling test, which we call the torture test. The winner of that was the Husqvarna Power Axe. Chainsaws are pretty much a go-to for homesteaders and people living off-grid. Basically, individuals in remote areas may be milling their own lumber, right? So that gave us an idea to test the battery saw's abilities in this role. So we set up a lumber milling scenario. Spoiler alert that the Hud-Son sawmill would excel at this, obviously, but instead we used a vintage Hayden lumbermaker milling guide for the test. The guide was mounted on a piece of composite decking attached to that massive oak cant. And each saw was then, mounted to the guide, which allows the bar to kind of pivot freely into a vertical position. And you can run through the log until the battery was fully drained. So kind of like you're going to make a board, for example. For most saws, this was absolutely a torture test. And we jokingly call it the Great Oak Gauntlet because it was just murder on these saws. So look, what we got out of this. The data we got out of this, we recorded either the total distance cut on a single battery charge, or we would record the time required for the saw to make the completed full-length cut. One of those 2 things we were able to record. The standout performer was not only able to saw the full length, which was 87 inches, cut without bogging down, and that was the Power Axe, the Husqvarna Power Axe, the 350i, pulling an 18-inch bar through the log, and it did it in 6 minutes and 18 seconds. It impressed the crew, and it was the deepest cutting saw as well in the test. And this was a torturous test, both on the saw and the user. Because cutting depths varied due to mounting positions, bar lengths, voltage, battery capacity, raw performance wasn't directly comparable, right? So to normalize all of these things, we calculated inches cut per watt hour for each saw. We moved on to features. The winner of the features is no surprise, it's a Steel. Features is important to any tool, but poorly executed ones can create kind of frustrating user experiences, right? So for this test, we focused on practicality. For example, kind of like 3 of the things we kept kind of instilling on the guys were, is the chain tension easy to adjust and does it hold once it's set? Do the felling spikes, the dogs, effectively grip the lumber? Is the bar and chain oil tank easily acceptable? Can you access it easily? So we used those as kind of our guidelines, and we also focused on some I would call them subcategories, such as we looked at overall design, adjustability of the saw, safety, innovation, and other features, whether it had a battery gauge or stuff like that, safeties and things like that, onboard storage. Our crew also agreed that extra speed models, modes on these saws, they aren't a major selling point on a chainsaw. So though a few saws executed them flawlessly, they're going top speed in their cutting. They're not playing with modes of speeds. So like I said, the winner of the features category was the steel. The saw feels almost exact replacement for a gas chainsaw. It's a really smooth saw. It has aggressive felling spikes, robust build, tooled chain tension system, which our team prefers over like the hand crank systems for durability. The steel oil caps are easily accessible even with gloves on. And the steel offers 3 modes. We talked about these modes just a second ago, but there's an eco mode for battery conservation, a high setting compatible with like all steel AP series batteries. And then there's a turbo mode that requires the AP 500S largest capacity battery that they have. A standout feature on the steels is the electronic oil monitoring system. A projected laser inside the bar oil tank tracks oil flow. It triggers a red alert like alarm, a red light alarm on the control screen if the oil is low or contaminated with debris. So this ensures that you have proper lubrication, and it prevents expensive, basically bar damage and maybe even tool damage. The oiler system also manually is adjustable for, say, flow based on temperatures, wood species, or maybe some cutting conditions. Second place features went to the Husqvarna Pro. That's the 542i XP. And while it lacks some of Steel's more advanced features, it still offers an eco mode. It's got aggressive felling spikes, an adjustable oiler, an excellent battery gauge level. Third place went to the Husqvarna Power Axe, which lost points to its Pro sibling because of its clumsier kind of hand crank tensioning system. The bottom performance for features were Atlas, Ryobi, and DeWalt. While these saws include onboard wrenches and a few additional features, it didn't really compare to what we were seeing in the competition. We then moved on to ergonomics, and again, user experience, it's important. The winner of that was a tie between Steel and the Husqvarna Power Axe. At the conclusion of our testing day, our crew gathered around all the saws and we evaluated 6 key ergonomics. So we looked at things like grip contour, the grip texture, the forward handle design and placement, ease of battery change, and control locations. So both saws are thoughtfully designed and executed. They really are. Steel places all of their controls within easy reach, right? So while you're maintaining a secure grip, it offers lightning fast battery change, and it's just a really comfortable handle. The only drawback is that front handlebar is plastic, and I think the entire crew would agree that we'd all like to see a metal option of that. The Power Axe, that features kind of a unique sliding tang safety on the rear grip of the handle. It activates as you set your hand, and the crew really liked that. The Husqvarna Pro followed closely behind, and that basically delivers a complete package in a lightweight, balanced, just an extremely comfortable saw to operate. Front handlebar angle and metal construction stood out as well because they like that metal handle. The Makita XGT saw also performed well with simple, easy to reach controls. DeWalt, they struggled a bit in this category due to its kind of oversized grip, a flat safety release lever that really does feel awkward, and kind of that cramped front handle. Milwaukee ranked lowest in ergonomics. And look, while a strong performer overall, its front handlebar, they're excessively wide, kind of resembling like a beachcomber bicycle, right? And the elongated body, it just makes it rear heavy. So this design, it does require a little bit more effort for the user to kind of maintain balance during operation. So I'm hoping Milwaukee's answer and listening to this and maybe answers the call on the next gen and makes that a little more compact. We moved on to price. And again, we didn't score it, but we listed, we talk about it. The winner of price was the Atlas. While not included in overall structure, we all think price is just an important category for many, many users. Some folks on a battery platform don't care. Some people don't care in general. A lot of folks care about price. So we price the tools as accurately as possible as like a bare tool price. Some offerings are not available as bare tool, and therefore that kind of hurt them a little bit in the price category. The Atlas saw, it's available for under $150 from Harbor Freight Tools and was the most affordable tool. Second place was the Ryobi at $199. You can get that at the Home Depot. Third was the Echo at just under $250. And you can get that from small retailers like Acme Tools, Ohio Power Tool, stuff like that online, and Echo dealers around you. Fourth place went to Milwaukee at $279 for a bare tool. Our most expensive tool tested was the Husqvarna 542i at $719.99, and the Steel at $859.99. Now look, while these prices seem high compared to maybe some of the other saws, there's a reason when you buy a premium saw, right? So these two saws in particular are the professional grade models used for and designed for daily use. They can be serviced and repaired by dealerships if you need them to, and then put back in service. That durability and higher build quality comes at a cost, and it ensures longevity and reliability and performance over time. And hey, this is your investment if you're running these to make business, run your business and make money. The best battery chainsaw. So our top pick in the 16 to 18 inch bar range ended in a tie with both Husqvarna, the 542i XP 16 inch, and the Milwaukee M18 FUEL 16 inch saw, earning an overall score of 35 points. The Husqvarna, it stood out in testing. It just had impressive performance everywhere it went. It delivered excellent results in cross-cutting during our oak wafer cross-cutting runtime test. It's a lightweight saw, great build, ergonomic is great, good design, robust feature set. All of that kind of helps secure the top spot in our rankings. That said, you cannot lean on the saw too hard or it will stall. You need to let the saw do the work, basically. One standout feature was, standout feature was its lightning fast trigger reset after a stall, which we particularly noted during the milling test. It's fast reset. The Milwaukee M18 saw performed exceptionally well as well in our testing. It closely resembles the model we tested 5 years ago in our original head-to-head. And that familiarity kind of is both a strength and a weakness. While the saw remains simple, reliable, and effective, it would really benefit from a refresh design, particularly slimming down that front handlebar, maybe making the body a little bit more compact. As it stands, the saw feels disproportionately long for a 16-inch bar and chain, and it doesn't really fit well in a truck utility box, toolbox. So Milwaukee, keep that in mind. Another area for improvement is the lack of battery fuel gauge. You included on your backpack blowers, it should be on your chainsaw as well. Adding this, I think, would enhance the overall user experience. Despite those drawbacks, the M18 FUEL, it earned high praise from the pro users. They liked the saw. And they all said it was one of the few saws that they tested that day that they'd actually make room in their truck for. That's a strong endorsement of its work-ready simplicity, I think. Look, it's dependable, no frills tool. It gets the job done with few refinements. I think it could be just a little bit better, that's all. Third place was the Kress, a newcomer to the US market. Their rapid charging cyber tank system is fascinating. It allows for a full charge in as little as 12 minutes. It's unbelievable. It is very expensive to buy that cyber tank, but you should look it up. The technology is pretty cool. You combine that with lightning fast cutting speeds, the Kress saw was a solid choice for demanding pros. We've covered that cyber tank, by the way, and Kress products in past reviews. So it's definitely worth taking a look at. It's kind of interesting, and I think everybody's struggling for charging on the go, and they've definitely got a pretty cool solution. Fourth place was the Husqvarna 350i, the Power Axe, which trades some refinement of its pro-grade sibling for raw power. Designed, like I said, for framers and homesteaders, heavy-use homeowners in mind, it's an excellent option for property maintenance or firewood cutting. And our testing showed it's capable of handling some pro-grade work as well. The Husqvarna Power Axe was not on our radar. We did not even really think about it because we didn't think it was a pro saw. Husqvarna sent it to us to add in the testing, and we weren't quite sure what to expect, but it quickly became a favorite to use. What set it apart was it just has raw cutting power. It was the only saw in the lineup able to perform full cut through that solid oak cant during our milling test, and it did so without bogging down or slowing. I can't say that about any of the other saws. That level of performance surprised everybody, and it's worth noting the Power Axe does run an 18-inch bar, a little bit longer than some of the other ones. It has a larger pitch chain than its pro-grade sibling, the 542i. The Pro Axe, though, it did lose some points when it came to refinement. Its tool-free chain tensioning system, it's operated by hand crank. It proved to be clunky and kind of difficult to use, especially with gloves on. Lining it up properly when changing chains, super frustrating. While this system may kind of appeal to homeowners or farmers who don't maybe carry a scrunch, it can be aggravating for anybody who use traditional tools, right? Despite that, the Power Axe was a serious performer, and it showed up at test day. Again, powerful, capable, ready to work, just without all the bells and whistles and a few quirks, that's all. Best value chainsaw. Again, 16 to 18-inch bar range. The winner of that was the Atlas. So Atlas has shown up in a lot of our head-to-heads lately. We've been trying to include Harbor Freight tools. While price isn't included in our overall ranking, it's hard to ignore evaluating a tool's overall appeal, right? That's why we highlight a best value winner, recognizing maybe a saw that delivers exceptional performance relative to a lower cost. I can't speak for the longevity of some of these tools that come from these big box stores, but Atlas does offer a few impressive performance things at low cost, right? 80-volt chainsaw, prime example. This saw finished third in both of our speed cut and cross-cutting tests. It's got some power. Now, while it may not be the most ergonomic or feature-rich saw, you can buy it for $150. It's an outstanding value no matter your option or brand. So, the 2025 lineup that we tested showed significant changes and advancements, plus some new saws that we looked at from 5 years ago. Modern battery saws, they handle most homeowner and a lot of professional tasks with power, efficiency, and they're reliable. They start up. They don't clog. Spark plugs don't foul. So with improved battery technology, motor design, and user-focused features, today's cordless battery-powered chainsaws, they're practical, high-performing, and increasingly more capable, truly ready to do cutting tasks. So, folks, thank you for watching. If you found this review helpful, don't forget to like the video, comment, and please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It helps support us, and we appreciate your support. We'll see you in the next video. We'll be doing a larger bar size saw, and we're also going to be coming out with some dust extractors and wet dry vacuum head-to-heads in the next coming weeks. Take care.